I'm Chance Dorland, and this is the Spurs Insider, our weekly NBA podcast from ExpressNews.com. I'm joined now for a special three-way discussion episode by San Antonio Express News sports writers Jeff McDonald and Mike Finger to discuss our first event of the 2018-2019 season, Monday's Media Day with the San Antonio Spurs. Now, Jeff, I know you've penned a few articles about that meeting, including info on Greg Popovich, also Manu Ginobili. And Mike, your writing includes another look at DeMar DeRozan. We'll get to all that. Let's start here first with Greg Popovich. But of course, Mike, feel free to jump in at any time. Jeff, while the focus of the day was on the Spurs, their transition into this season, and some new faces as the team's roster is basically completely different from just a few years ago, personal matters and the importance of basketball being secondary in someone's life was in the spotlight. Tell me about it.
Yeah, that's kind of been one of Pop's mantras for as long as I've been around him is, there are more important things for basketball. I've heard that spiel, about how basketball is how we earn our living and it's the job and it's, it's important while we're doing it, but it's not as important as real life things. And I think Pop has always had that perspective, but it was put even more starkly into perspective for him over the past year or so. A lot of death in the Spurs family over the past few months, but most personally for Pop was the death of his wife, Erin, in April in the middle of that playoff series. And yesterday was the first time he really addressed that since having to take a leave of absence in the middle of the playoffs last year. And it basically, he just opened his portion of Media Day with a statement thanking all the people that supported him, offered support, encouragement, emails, cards, people around the NBA, fans, not even Spurs fans, just random fans from around the country. And it was kind of a touching and heartfelt moment to kick off the season with, and a little maudlin as well.
And for him to do that was kind of jarring in a way because when Aaron passed away during the playoffs last year, the Spurs didn't even have a moment of silence before the next game. They didn't acknowledge that Pop was not at the game at all because he just never wants anybody in his life at all. And he doesn't want to talk about stuff like that. So I don't think he was looking forward to addressing this yesterday, but he I guess he felt like he needed to, and it coming from him, the fact that he took time to thank people for kind of reaching out to him personally, that I think that was even more striking from him than maybe if any other coach had done it.
Yeah, I think there was a question too. Like we talked about this amongst ourselves months ago. Like when Pop does have to come back to Media Day, like, are we just going to start asking him questions about his wife passing away? It seemed we didn't know how to handle it. And I think this was in a way Pop's way and the Spurs way of kind of taking control of that question. And Pop's going to address it. We're going to get it out of the way, and then we're going to talk about the more mundane aspects of basketball.
And do you think that's how it's going to play out? I mean, obviously, Greg Popovich is not known for throwing his personal life into being the coach of the San Antonio Spurs, let alone when something so tragic happens. Is this maybe the final discussion on this topic as the season moves forward?
I think that was the point. Like Jeff said, he was kind of nipping it in the bud where eventually somebody's going to ask me about this. I don't want to discuss it any more than I need to. So I'm going to kind of take control, thank everybody, acknowledge that I went through a difficult time and then move on from there. Because as soon as he finishes with that, I ask him, well, did you think about, did that make you reevaluate whether or not you wanted to keep coaching, whether you wanted to come back? Because that was a question a few months ago. What does this mean for his future? Does after you suffer a personal tragedy like that, do you want to come back and mess around with basketball? And his response to that was no. And it was clear that he was finished talking about that subject, and it was time to move on to basketball, and that's what we did.
Well, I'll pay my respects to Mr. Greg Popovich and move along from this topic. Mike, you just wrote about DeMar DeRozan. What's the news on that front?
Well, I found it interesting at Media Day how honest he was about how betrayed he felt by this trade from the Raptors. And, it's only natural that any human being, whenever they feel like they're rejected by, in NBA terms, a family that he's been around for almost 10 years, the only NBA family he's ever known. And then even though, yes, the Spurs traded for him and the Spurs wanted him, it was a betrayal because he thought he was going to spend his entire career in Toronto and he wanted to. And basically the Raptors said, we don't want you anymore, but you can go away. We'll take Kawhi Leonard. And he was hurt by that. And he put it in a really interesting way. He said that for the first few weeks after the trade, he indulged in the reality of it, which is just a great turn of phrase. And I think really does illustrate how he was feeling. He had to let himself kind of accept that he was not going to be in Toronto anymore, something that he thought he was going to always be. And so, yes, now he's excited to be a member of the Spurs, and I think he's starting to get the optimism there and starting to get excited about playing for Greg Popovich and playing for a team that's won a bunch of championships. But moving on takes time. And what I noted in the column was that while DeMar DeRozan was moving on from the Raptors, the Spurs were kind of moving on from their big three and from Kawhi Leonard. And I think it took DeMar some time to move on, and he probably hasn't moved on all the way yet. And it certainly took the Spurs some time to move on, and they certainly haven't moved on all the way from Manu Ginobili and Tony Parker and Kawhi Leonard yet. And they're kind of both doing the same thing at the same time, and we'll see how they can help each other out. Obviously, the best way for both of them to move on is for them to help each other out. If DeMar can turn the Spurs into a playoff caliber team again, that'll be great. If the Spurs can give DeMar an avenue to be an all-star again, that'll be great. So it's just kind of an interesting parallel between two entities, I guess, that are moving on from something that they thought that would be part of them for a long time, and we'll just see how it turns out.
Just selfishly, from a media standpoint that has to talk to these people and get quotable, interesting things out of them, get them to say that kind of stuff, definitely an upgrade over the guy we lost in Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi Leonard is a man of few words. DeMar DeRozan is a Magic Johnson Award winner, and he kind of showed it yesterday with some of his responses.
Bringing up Kawhi Leonard, I'm glad that you did, since it was such a big topic in the past on this podcast. Well, but since it's already out there, recently I read that he has no regrets about what went down. What do you guys think of that?
Yeah, we sent Tom Osborne, our the other member of our crew, up to Toronto for Kawhi's first day as a Raptor. And yeah, I think the point was to try to get some answers from Kawhi, because we haven't talked to him and he hasn't really addressed what exactly happened that caused this breakup with the Spurs. Like, you hear, there are rumors, you hear stuff from back channels, from his uncle, from his agents. Kawhi has never really addressed it, and he still hasn't. I think that the answers he gave in Toronto to Spurs-related questions were pretty unsatisfying for everyone in San Antonio. He really wasn't, entertaining those questions. And I guess I get it, because it's your first day in Toronto, you want to talk about the future, but I don't know. Maybe we in San Antonio are being too. I don't know. Maybe we're asking too much, but it seems like the fans here deserve some kind of closure, some kind of explanation. But they're not going to get it from Kawhi Leonard.
What I found funny, and Jeff and I were discussing this at Media Day, was there were some tweets coming out of Canada during Toronto's Media Day about how some reporters up there were speculating, maybe Kawhi will turn out to be a fun guy and a great interview once he gets out from behind the Spurs Iron Curtain. Maybe
once he goes to the Great White North. Yeah. I mean, that's comes out of his shell.
We were just, good luck with that. If you think that it was the Spurs that were keeping Kawhi Leonard from showing this multi-layered, outgoing personality that's going to make everyone fall in love with him, good luck with that. Maybe you're right, and maybe he's going to become, the next Magic Johnson, the next, just superstar crossover Hollywood entertainment mogul. But I sincerely doubt it. And he did a laugh yesterday, which got a lot of Twitter love, a lot of online attention. It sounded sort of human, his laugh, but
let's I just pause for a moment. It sounded sort of human. I mean, this is kind of what happened in the later stages of the Kawhi Leonard discussion here on the Spurs Insider. Was this discussion of people have talked to him, and I don't want to kick the guy when he's down after everything that's happened, but a little robotic. Yeah, you said it sounded human. That's praise. And
I don't want to come off as saying that Kawhi Leonard doesn't have feelings. I mean, he has endured things in his life that I can't even dream of having to go through. And who are we to judge how someone chooses to live, how someone chooses to express themselves? But a big part, and I've written this, and Jeff has alluded to this. A big part of the reason why his relationship broke down with the Spurs is because there was no communication there. And communicating is part of being a pro athlete, and he's just not good at it. And there could be legitimate reasons for this. And, people are different. Some people are skittish around others. Some people don't like to talk to people. I'm one of those people. A lot of times I don't like to talk to people when I don't want to.
Yeah, it's surprising. People in media sometimes not the life of the party, but it's true.
Right. But I mean, if he wants these endorsement contracts, if he wants to be the face of the franchise, you've got to show a little personality, and he's just never been good at that. And maybe he can learn to do it, but it's not going to happen overnight. And for anybody to think that once he gets away from San Antonio, he's suddenly going to show all of this, that is a huge change you're asking him to make, and I just don't see it happening.
Canadians are so cute. They're so cute.
And once again, maybe to play a little devil's advocate here, something else that's come up on the podcast, for years, there were other stars on the Spurs who weren't so outgoing, and people really liked that. And so you can make the case, at some point we say that's good, and then at another point we say that's not so great, but
I don't want to litigate Tim Duncan versus Kawhi Leonard, but there was a difference there.
That's what I was going to say, but there was a difference. It's not the same thing. I think you have a loose argument there. If that's an argument you want to make, it's not the same thing. I don't think Tim Duncan would have done anything similar had he been in the same situation, but it's an argument that can be made. So, hey, we'll leave it at that. No more Kawhi Leonard talk. It'll be great when you guys have to justify the plane ticket that was used to get someone over there, and that's the reporting that you got back. So we'll see what happens in the future with those trips. Let's move back to Media Day this week on Monday. So we've talked about Greg Popovich, obviously a sad occurrence in his life, losing his wife. Moving forward, he's still with the team for now. Talking about how even though he's decided to stick with coaching for the time being, basketball's secondary to some other concerns in everyone's lives. Just spoke about DeMar DeRozan, a very different player than Kawhi Leonard, and we'll see how that works out. Manu Ginobili is someone who really can't seem to stay out of our headlines at the Express News. Jeff, what was the topic of your recent write-up on him?
I thought we were done talking about this guy. I was told there'd be no more Manu talk. No, I'm kidding. They're going to have him around as much as possible. A lot like Tim Duncan did after his retirement. Like, you'll go in the practice gym just randy on a Tuesday, and Duncan will be in there working out, talking with the guys, and sort of having some sort of loose consulting role with the team. And they want to kind of do the same for Manu Ginobili for as long as he's around. Manu has said he has plans to go back to Argentina in December and stay there for a few months, entire season. But until then, they'd love to have him in the gym and around. And they took him on the recent coaching retreat. Every year before the start of the season, Greg Popovich takes all the coaches to, on a retreat to somewhere nice and with good wine and good food. And they invited Manu on this one. And what Pop said yesterday was, it starts out like, Manu's first day on the job, and he's quiet, and he's just kind of getting the lay of the land. And then by the end of the first day of the retreat, he's in the middle of all their arguments about strategy and who should do what and X's and O's and rotations and all that stuff. So it was just it's just been interesting the way they treat their former players, because there's a lot of them around. Matt's still around. He's doing TV work, and you'll see him in the gym every now and then. And they just rehired Brent Barry for the front. When they talk about the Spurs being a family, they tend to keep those guys in the fold, especially the ones they like, for as long as possible.
The thought of Manu as a coach is kind of fascinating to me, because on the one hand, on the one hand, like he has more to offer than just about anybody else, because he really thinks things through, and he's the kind of guy who has fresh ideas. But on the other, it just makes no sense at all because of several reasons. First of all, he has interest in so many things other than basketball, and I can't imagine him limiting his retirement as a player to staying inside a gym and having people work on their jump shots. The other thing is, like, Manu Ginobili teaching someone how to play basketball the way Manu Ginobili did. It just doesn't work, because what made Manu such a great basketball player a lot of times is that he drove Greg Popovich nuts. Like, he just did the absolute wrong thing, made the wrong pass, took the wrong risk over and over again, and it always worked out for him. So in theory, like, Spurs fans, I can see how excited they'd be. Manu Ginobili is coaching. He's helping out. Maybe he can coach the team one day. But on the other hand, I just do not see that happening.
Yeah, he would be the only coach in NBA history to yell at players for not trying to throw a pass between the opponent's legs.
Exactly.
Like that. It's right there. Why don't you throw it through his legs? It's easy.
Yeah.
Wow, that was a great Manu impression. That's going to stick in my memory for a while now. So, that was my question. You guys have kind of already answered it, but, it seems like well-liked, been talked about here on the Spurs Insider, been written about at expressnews.com, and, of course, in the physical paper. Maybe not the best Spur, but perhaps the most beloved Spur when it comes to who the fans enjoy, who the fans maybe are going to miss the most. But you've made a convincing argument, perhaps not coach material, but certainly would be interesting.
I think he's, like I said, he has a lot to offer as a coach, but and the way that Tim Duncan has kind of hung around the team, I think is a model for the way that Manu will, and that he can come by the gym in those brief periods when he's around the team and young players. I'm sure they'll look up to him and glean all kinds of knowledge from him, and he'll be great to have around. But I just don't see him limiting himself in all the things that he's interested in, and science and nature and the world and politics and all kinds of things, charity work, that he's going to limit himself to helping DeJounte Murray with his jump shot. I just think he thinks that he has so much more to give. His own family, he wants to spend time in Argentina, and to be a coach in the NBA is a 12-month-a-year commitment. And I just think it's kind of far-fetched that he'd do that.
All right. Well, that makes sense. But boy, makes you wonder. That's going to wrap it up for today's episode. Jeff McDonald, Mike Finger, final thoughts discussing Media Day this week. Obviously, a lot more left in this 2018-2019 season that is yet to begin. But final thoughts before we say goodbye, gentlemen.
We've kind of talked about it before, but it's just going to be one of the more interesting training camps, preseasons, start to seasons that I can remember. 11 of them weren't on the team last year, and that's just a huge amount of turnover for a team that for a long time prided itself on having very little turnover. So it's a lot of new faces to learn, new names to learn, learning their games, learning about them for us in the media, just meeting them and learning about them. So it's going to be interesting for the fans and for us covering the team, and probably for the players and coaches as well.
One thing to watch, and we've talked about this before, everyone says that Greg Popovich will be invigorated and excited about the opportunity to coach a team without all the expectations and with new people and get a chance to start over again. And that sounds great in theory, and I think there's a lot of truth to that. But if this team is 41-41, he's going to get sick of it pretty quick. So it'll be kind of something to watch to see how much he really enjoys starting over, how invigorated he really is by the chance to coach up a team that does not have all those big three type players on it, all those system players on it. I'm sure it'll be kind of towing the line between excitement and frustration, and that should be a great storyline to keep an eye on all season long.
And a big thank you to San Antonio Express News sports writers Jeff McDonald and Mike Finger for joining me for today's special episode of the Spurs Insider, our weekly NBA podcast from expressnews.com. For the San Antonio Express News, I'm Chance Storland.